Hey, welcome to YOUCANIC. This is an informational video about the hybrid batteries. This one right here is off of a Mercedes S-Class, but the same battery is also found on certain BMWs, and it might be also found in other makes as well. This video is only for information. This battery should be handled with care, should only be handled by somebody who is a trained technician. But you gotta also be very careful. This is not a unit that should be repaired because if you try to overcharge this, it's very dangerous. If the battery is not charged properly, if you have a bad cell and you try to overcharge the battery, you could end up in a really dangerous explosion. The battery should be handled with care. It should not be dropped. It should not be opened up and cut. This is extremely dangerous, but just for information purposes, so you understand how these batteries work, how they're built, and what actually goes wrong with them, you can watch this video. Please do not try to repair them. So here's the hybrid battery. You can see right here, you have the connections. When you repair the vehicle, you're supposed to lock to put a lock in here. You're supposed to disable the whole system with diagnostic scanner because this is about 120, 140 volt DC, and it can kill you if there's a short while you work on the car. One of the most common problems with these, there's actually two issues with these batteries. The first one is that the battery inside has what's called the BMS, or the battery management system. And the BMS connector is right here. If you look on the back here, you have a circuit board right here. What this has in here has the contractors, and on top of the battery, these two is what the BMS is. And the BMS manages these cells. You have 35 cells here. Each cell is about 3.7 volt, so these cells, when they get charged, the BMS, it's monitoring so they don't overcharge, and also monitors the temperature, because if these cells overcharge or overheat, they're very dangerous. They can explode. So that's what the BMS does. So it's monitoring that. It does a few other things, such as monitor the interlock circuit. So if there's an open circuit between the power electronic module, the AC compressor, and the hybrid battery, it will disable the engine start on the hybrid vehicle. So what are the two most common problems with these batteries? There's two issues. First of all, the BMS can fail, so you can stop monitoring these cells. It doesn't communicate. So what are the two most common problems with these batteries? Well, first is the BMS itself. So the BMS, here and there, either one could fail. It won't be able to monitor the cells, even if it can monitor the cells. So the BMS, if it can fail internally and stop monitoring the cells. So that's one common problem. It'll trigger a bunch of fault codes if that's the case. But there is another issue with these, and it has to do with this lithium-ion battery cells themselves. If these sit for a long time, which is pretty common on the hybrids, because if there's very limited technicians that can work in these cars, and what happens, these cars end up sitting for a long time. Now, one of the cells itself can go bad, and if one of the cells is bad, the system is just going to shut down. It's not going to function. It won't be able to start the car, right? But if you have another issue with a car, usually the power electronic module, because that's a really common failure as well, the car might be sitting for a long time, and in the meantime, these lithium-ion batteries are getting discharged very slowly, but they do get discharged. So if you have a car sitting for a year and the battery was only, let's say, at 40% when the car stopped working, well, it's discharging, and it's discharging over time, and it's discharging, and if it reaches about 15% state of charge, then that is very critical, and the car will not start because it needs to be over 15%. There's ways to charge it, but you need to have the right scanner, and you need to check if the contractors are closed when you turn on the ignition, and connect the outside 12 volt a 12-volt charger to the jump starting terminals, turn on the ignition, and then you gotta monitor the contractor. See if the contractors that's inside here is closing, because when it's closing, then it allows these two right here. It allows the DC to DC connector that's installed on typically on the S-Class. The W221 is on the front passenger side on the wheel well. It connects right here, and then that brings 130 volt actually, and that the contractor here is a switch, basically an on-off switch, which when you turn off the ignition, it just turns off, like it disconnects this battery, because you don't want this battery to stay on. So but when you connect that charger, you turn on the ignition, you can use a scanner to see if the contractors are closing, because the contractors are not closed. It's not closed here, and the battery is not getting any power to charge. So it's a little bit tricky to charge these and to work with these systems. And if you have a Mercedes hybrid or a BMW hybrid, you already know there's very limited technicians. And even if you go to dealerships, they only have a certain number of technicians that can work on these cars, and that's because they're just complicated, and also they're very extremely dangerous. So that's why you should not try to repair this on your own. That's it as far as like how this works. One thing to keep in mind is that this system is cooled through the AC that also cools your vehicle, and you can see right here we have that removed. You can see the connector here. So you can see that piece, but connects here to the side of the battery pack, and these black pieces right here, this is where the refrigerant circulates through there and cools these cells, because they do overheat. And remember, if these cells overheat, that can be very dangerous, and also overheating them too frequently can shorten their life. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, this just make sure you do not try to charge with these. This is with the connector here to the hybrid battery. Do not try to charge the battery here. Do not try to put 120 or 130 volt DC, and remember, this is direct current, not AC, alternate in current. But do not try to do that, and try to use a scanner to close the contractors and feed 130 volt here. Because when this battery is charged, it needs to be balance charged, which means each cell is monitored by the BMS. It goes up to 3.7 volt, and then the balance charge, where it does, it just stops that cell from overcharging, and then the other ones continue to charge, because when you charge these cells, they don't charge all at the same speed. So one might take, let's say, 30 minutes to charge, while the other one might take about 40 minutes. This is just estimated numbers, but the idea is that you don't want these cells to have different voltages, and that's what the BMS does. BMS makes sure that the cells are reaching that ideal voltage, and none of them are overcharged, and none of them are overheating. So that's the hybrid battery on a Mercedes. We hope that you have a better understanding how this works. Please do not work on these. These are extremely dangerous, life-threatening. If they explode, can kill you and cause a lot of damage. So do not repair them. Just leave them up to the trained technician. And thank you for watching. Bye.